Hello guys, and welcome back to Yellow Submarine. Apple Corp Ltd, casually known as Apple, is a multi-outfitted media enterprise established in London in January 1968 by the individuals from the Beatles to supplant their prior organization, Beatles Ltd, and form a conglomerate. Its name is a quip. Its central division is Apple Records, which was dispatched around the same time. Different divisions included Apple Publishing, Apple Electronics, Apple Films, and Apple Retail, whose most remarkable endeavor was the impermanent Apple Boutique at Baker Street and Paddington Street in central London. The headquarters for Apple in the last part of the 1960s was at the upper floors of 94 Baker Street. Later, it was at 95 Wigmore Street, and then the headquarters was later located at 3 Savile Row. The last address was otherwise called the Apple Building, home to the Apple Studio. From 1970 to 2007, Apple's CEO was previous Beatles road director Neil Aspinall, although he didn't formally bear that title until Alan Klein had left the organization. The current CEO is Jeff Jones. In 2010, Apple Corp's position number 2 on the Fast Company magazine's rundown of the world's most innovative music organization because of the arrival of the Beatles rock band computer game and the remastering of the Beatles inventory. This video is a way by which you can learn more about the Beatles Apple records. Before we dive right into today's topic of discussion, I would appreciate it if you just hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to get updated on other amazing videos that are coming up. So shall we? The formation of the Beatles Apple Records is hilarious history. Everything began when the accountant for the Beatles informed the iconic group of musicians that they had £2 million that they could either put resources into undertaking or, in all likelihood, lose to the inland revenue, which was because corporate business charges were lower than the tax bills of each individual. Peter Brown, the personal assistant to Beatles supervisor Brian Epstein, exercises to observe charge covers for the pay that the Beatles created started, however, ahead of schedule as 1963 to 1964, when Walter Starch might have been placed accountable for such tasks. Initial steps into that course were the establishment of Beatles Ltd, and in mid-1967, Beatles & Co. The Beatles marketing specialist, Derek Taylor, recollected that Paul McCartney had the name for the new organization when he visited Taylor's organization flat in London and announced that they were beginning a shiny new type of business, and afterward asked what the principal thing a kid is shown when the kid starts to develop. With the response being A for Apple, McCartney then recommended the name to be Apple Corps, yet they couldn't enroll the name, so they utilized Corpse, which had similar elocution as core. McCartney later uncovered that he had been roused by René Magritte's painting, Le Jeu d'Amour, highlighting an apple with Au revoir painted on it. Since another business structure was found with a lower tax rate, Epstein considered how to manage it to legitimize it to the authorities and initially considered it, for the most part, as a marketing organization. While busy setting up the new organization, Supervisor Epstein passed on, surprisingly, in what appeared to be an unexpected sedative overdose on August 27, 1967. This event forced the Beatles to speed up their arrangements to oversee their monetary undertakings, as well as giving an umbrella to cover the Beatles' own financial and business undertakings. Apple was expected to provide a method for monetary help to anybody in the more extensive world attempting to get practical creative tasks going. McCartney at first had planned to utilize Epstein's music distributing organization, NEMS Enterprises, for these plans. Still, after Epstein's demise, it was discovered that Australian Robert Stigwood was attempting to get hold of NEMS. Each of the 4 Beatles was not for such a result. They were firmly against it. They rushed to set up Apple, and to see that the Beatles would not be necessary for the NEMS bundle, Stigwood went to establish his organization, RSO Records. The Apple logo was planned by Gene Mahon, with artist Alan Aldridge interpreting the copyright notice to show up on record discharges. In January 1968, Beatles Ltd formally changed its name to Apple Corp Ltd, and then established the Apple brand name in 47 nations. In February, the organization likewise enlisted Apple Electronics, Apple Films Ltd, Apple Management, Apple Music Publishing, Apple Overseas, Apple Publicity, Apple Records, Apple Retail, and Apple Tailoring, Civil and Theatrical, with the plan on zeroing in on 5 divisions: records, hardware, film, distributing, and retailing. Lennon and McCartney made known their new business idea on a question and answer forum, which took place on May 14, 1968, in New York City. At this forum, McCartney declared that the establishment would be a lovely spot where people could purchase delightful things. The company would also be weird and could serve as a sort of Western socialism. It didn't have an office for the early months of Apple's presence. The more significant part of the organization's business was organized from the NEMS building. It was not until the pre-winter of 1967 that Apple opened a London office at long last. Since the Beatles previously acquired a 4-story complex at 94 Baker Street that their bookmakers had bought as a venture property, they concluded that Baker Street was as great an area as any for Apple. In September, they set up an office for Apple Publishing in the Baker Street building. With Epstein's demise, no one in the Beatles' inward circle with the business insight could deal with the organization. Likewise, the Beatles concluded that they would oversee it themselves with their band issues. Lennon requested that Alastair Taylor function as general manager for Apple. During this period, Taylor showed up in the well-known ad to Advance Apple, asking for new specialists in the arts industry. Although Apple was proclaimed the best new record organization of the year for 1968, after a short time, the musicians' obliviousness of money and organization joined with their credulous, idealistic mission of financing battling. Obscure artists left Apple Corp. With no business-tested solid strategy. The Beatles' naivety and powerlessness to monitor their records were anxiously taken advantage of by the workers of Apple, who bought medications and cocktails, organization snacks at costly London cafes, and worldwide calls made routinely on office phones, which would all be treated as an operational expense. Aspinall at long last consented to coordinate the organization on an impermanent premise, basically with the goal that somebody would at long last be in control. When, in 1969, the Beatles connected with Klein as their director, he likewise acquired the chairmanship of Apple Corp., which prompted a quick smoothing out of organization issues. The initial 2 years of the organization's presence likewise harmonized with a checked deterioration and gradual collapse of the Beatles' associations with one another, at last prompting the separation of the band in April 1970. Apple immediately slid into monetary disarray, which was settled solely after numerous long periods of litigation. When the Beatles organization was broken up in 1975, the disintegration of the Apple Corp. Was likewise thought of. However, it was chosen to keep it together and running while successfully resigning or retiring every one of its divisions. The organization is settled at 27 Ovington Square, in London's lofty Knightsbridge region. Possession and control of the organization stayed with McCartney, Starr, and the legacies of Lennon and Harrison. Mac Corp. Has had a long history of brand name questions with Apple Computer, presently Apple Inc. The debate was at long last settled in 2007, with Apple Corp. Moving responsibility for the Apple name and all related brand names to Apple Inc., and Apple Inc. solely authorizing these back to the Beatles organization. In April 2007, Apple likewise resolved a long-running question with EMI and declared the retirement of CEO Aspinall. Aspinall was replaced by Jeff Jones. The Apple Corp. Worked via various fields, mostly in line with music enterprises and other forms of media. These fields include Apple Electronics. This was the electronics division of Apple Corp. It was founded at the 50 Shapes Ltd. And is located at 34 Boston Place, Westminster, London. Yanni Alexis Mardas headed the division. However, this division did not make any progress or breakthroughs. Another division was Apple Films. It was the filmmaking aspect of the Apple Corp. Magical Mystery Tour, released in 1967, was its first production. Yellow Submarine, which was produced in 1968, Let It Be, which was created in 1970, Did Britain Murder Hanratty, which was created in 1969, Raga, which was created in 1971, The Concert for Bangladesh, which was produced in 1972, Born to Boogie, which was a 1972 movie, Son of Dracula, a 1974 movie, and Little Malcolm, which was produced in 1974, is the array of films produced by Apple Films. Apple's music publishing, another arm of Apple Corp., originated before the record organization. In September 1967, the principal specialists to be endorsed by Apple Publishing were two lyricists from Liverpool. Paul Tennant and David Rhodes were offered an agreement after meeting McCartney in Hyde Park. They were encouraged to establish a band by Epstein after he and Lennon heard their demos, calling the focal band point. However, Epstein, who was to have dealt with the band, kicked the bucket before he could become involved. Terry Doran, MD of Apple Publishing, turned into their administrator, endorsed them by Dream Records. Apple published the band's self-wrote tunes from mid-1968. One more early band on its publishing program was the band named Grapefruit. Apple Books, which was part of Apple Publishing, was to a great extent latent and had not many publications. One prominent delivery was the book that went into the underlying pressing of the Let It Be collection named The Beatles Get Back. It contained photos by Ethan Russell and text by Rolling Stone authors Jonathan Cott and David Dalton. Albeit the book was credited to Apple Publishing, all of the work on the task was finished by consultants. The Apple Boutique was a retail outlet and one of the arms of Apple Corps. It was situated at 94 Baker Street in London and was one of the primary undertakings by Apple Corps. Lennon's school companion, Pete Shotton, was recruited as chief, and the Dutch design aggregate, The Fool, was hired to plan the store and a significant part of the product. The store opened to many exhibitions on December 7, 1967, with Lennon and Harrison joining the opening ceremony. The store was never productive because of shoplifting by clients and its staff to a great extent. The store shut its entryways on July 31, 1968. Apple Studio, which was also an arm of Apple Corps, was a recording studio situated in the storm cellar of the Apple Corps Central Command at 3 Savile Row. The office was renamed Apple Studios after its development in 1971. Initially planned by Alex Mardos of Apple Electronics, the underlying establishment ended up being impossible to work in, with practically no standard studio elements, for example, a talkback framework or patch bay between the studio and the control room, not to mention Mardos' guarantee developments, and must be rejected. In any case, the Beatles recorded and shot bits of their collection Let It Be in the Apple Studio, with gear acquired from EMI. During takes, they needed to close down the structure's focal warming because the absence of soundproofing permitted the warming framework to be heard in the studio. Apple Studio was shut down on May 16, 1975. The Apple Corps was involved in so many legal battles after the separation of the Beatles. It was like the company survived by suing several other companies. In 1978, Apple Records filed a suit against Apple Computer for trademark infringement. However, the case was settled in 1981, with Apple Computer paying a sum of $80,000 to Apple Corps and agreeing to stay out of the music business. They both had another lawsuit where Apple Corps accused Apple Computer of playing MIDI music, which was a violation of the 1981 settlement agreement. But this case was settled in 1991, with Apple Computer paying $26.5 million. In September 2003, Apple Computers was sued again by Apple Corps to introduce the iTunes Music Store and the iPod. Trials for this case opened on March 29, 2006 in the UK, and on May 8, 2006, the case was judged in favor of Apple Computers. Apple Corps and Apple Computers, which is now known as Apple Inc., announced a settlement of their trademark dispute in which Apple Inc. took ownership of all trademarks related to the brand name Apple. It then licensed a portion of the trademark to Apple Corps for its continued use. Apple Inc. in 2010 launched the entire catalog of the Beatles in the iTunes Store. Apple also got into a lawsuit in 1979 with EMI and Capitol over the underpayment of the band by more than £10.5 million. A settlement was reached in 1989, and the band was granted an increased royalty rate. Apple also sued Nike Inc., EMI, Whedon & Kennedy, a Nike advertisement agency, and Capitol Records for the illegal use of the song titled Revolution in a 1987 Nike commercial. In 1989, the case was settled outside the courtroom, and a significant exchange of money was suggested to have been the settlement. This ends the enlightenment on the Apple records established for and by the Beatles. We hope that you liked the video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to receive notifications about our future videos. Till next time, bye!